Back in 2007, I started a tech job with an IP/phone long-distance company. The company is no longer around, and honestly, I don't know how they stayed in business as long as they did. It was really a pyramid scam, but thankfully, I was on the IT side of things, so I didn't have to sell anything. It was a small typical tech support call center. The customers would call in, or Verizon would call and say DT1 lines were down, or had outages. I was the only female on my team, having to prove myself and show that I can do anything my male counterparts could. It didn't take long and the customers respected me for being able to handle things. After making my mark, I decided to take the 10-hour night shifts. I worked Wednesday to Saturday from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m., and after 6 p.m., I was completely alone in the whole building. The rush to get out of the office by 6 p.m. was insane. I couldn't blame them, but I decided having 3 days off was better than 2. Like I said, I was by myself for most of the night. I would have to keep an eye on emails and make sure I answered calls. It was a very slow shift. I would get a lot of video games, reading, schoolwork, and writing done during this time, but sometimes I would just wander the building. I would have the VoIP phone system connected to my cell phone, so no calls would be missed. This allowed me to go get a soda, go get food, and so on. One time while I was up away from my desk, I was going down to the lunchroom to grab a soda. The vending machine was on the basement floor. The basement had a wall of windows and one set of security doors. Same for the entrance, only there was one camera facing that door. Nothing else to really make you feel very safe. I didn't like going to the basement much because the back of the building faced a land of dark woods. There was a walking path to the woods, but for some reason they didn't install lights for the walking path. Sometimes I would see animals run past, but other times I felt like someone was watching me. I always tried my best to make it fast when getting a soda or snack, but sometimes it didn't feel fast enough. So one night I was making my way down to the basement of the building to get a soda. It was a slow, dragging night and needed a little caffeine to pick me up. I counted my money as I walked to make sure I had enough to get in and out quick. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dart from the glass door back into the darkness. I stopped dead in my tracks and tried to scan the forest. But like I said, it was just blackness. I felt a bit of unease, and everything told me to turn on my heels and go back to my desk. But it was 9 p.m., and I had a fair bit of time left on my shift before I could blow this pop stand. I tried shaking the feelings off and briskly walked over to the soda machine and made my selection. The soda dropped, and as I bent down to get it, I heard a loud ping noise. It was as if someone had hit the glass with something. I stood straight up and felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I slowly turned around and was scared to see someone out there, but as I made the full turn, I saw once again nothing but darkness. I thought this was a good time to book it back up to the main floor. I didn't bother with the elevator. I went to the stairs and ran up them. My heart was already racing from having to go down there in the first place, then the loud bang and now running up 2 flights of stairs. Once I was back at my desk, I sunk down in my chair and tried to calm down. It was just one noise. I was in a building with locked doors and locked inner offices. I kept saying over and over in my head it was nothing. I was relieved by that, but out of nowhere, I got that feeling of someone watching me again. I peeked up over my cubicle wall and looked around my office. Nothing seemed out of place until I turned to face the front of the building. Outside the first set of doors was a slender, tall, dirty male. He was cupping his hands around his eyes to try and see past the reflecting of the lights inside. He didn't look like anyone I have ever seen at the office, and it was a little past 9 p.m. There is no good reason why he is checking out my office. As I sit in my chair, I hear the doors shake. I slowly stood up and watched him pull at the handles of the doors. They didn't budge, to my relief, but as I watched him, he turned to face me. His face looked bruised or dirty. I couldn't tell which. Once his eyes locked onto mine, he started to bang harder and smacked the glass. I was so scared. It was in the middle of the night. I was by myself. and out in the middle of this office building complex. I grabbed my headset and dialed 911. While getting the operator on the line, the guy was walking back and forth from one side of the glass doors to the next. 911, what's your emergency? The lady's voice was direct. Yes, my name is Jessica. I work at so-and-so. I need someone to come out. There is a guy trying to break into my office building. While speaking with her, the guy disappeared from my view. I tried to look in all directions, but I didn't see him. I knew that he wouldn't just walk off, not with how hard he was banging. Suddenly, a good-sized rock came out of nowhere and smashed against the door. I screamed and went under my desk. The operator asked what just happened, and I explained that a rock smashed against the glass door. She asked me if the glass was broken enough to let him in. I didn't want to stand up and look, but she told me to look in order to know where he was now. I crawled out from under my desk and just peeked over my wall and saw a huge crack down the first part of the door. I sank back down and told her to please have the police hurry. She said they were on their way. I have read many stories and people say that cops couldn't get there fast enough. They aren't kidding. It feels like time is standing still and you can do nothing. Another smash against the door, but along with the glass breaking sound. Sirens could be heard coming towards my building. It was music to my ears. I told the operator that the police had arrived and thanked her for all her support. I stood back up and looked over the cubicle wall. The red and blue lights were flashing wildly, but the thing I didn't see was the man. The top part of the door was completely smashed, and the rock was laying on the inside of the entryway. One officer came to the front door, and others were out combing the area. I could see their flashlights moving all around the parking lot. The first officer to come in the building and greet me was a very kind man. He was patient with me and let me explain what I saw happen. Soon, my boss arrived and checked on me, then the damage. At some point, my husband was called and told I would be escorted home by one of the officers. I took the next few days off and started to look for another job that wasn't by myself at night. When I gave my statement, I explained to the officer that the person could be partnered with a coworker who was fired a few weeks prior for stealing and not showing up. He knew when people came and went. He knew where we kept the cell phones we were selling. Not under lock and key, but under a desk of the provisioner. From smartphones to Blackberries, when they were still worth buying. I went on to leave this job a month later and started at a credit card machine company. It was an office full of people. Still a call center, but I felt safer. This happened to me 2 years ago. It was my first month on the job, and I work night security at this pretty interesting place. I am a 38-year-old male. I've worked security jobs most of my life in the graveyard shift. I was an event security guard for various well-known concert venues for years, so I've seen my fair share of strange things and crazy people. In other words, I don't scare easily. The place I currently work is a resort-style apartment complex. To get the layout, there are 3 floors of apartments with 50 units on each floor. This place takes up one city block with a golf course in back, indoor swimming pools, hot tubs, you name it, this place has it. The building itself has 12 exits on the first floor. The doors are locked at 11 p.m. You can exit, but can't get back in unless you go to the front of the building and ask to be buzzed in. The front lobby is set up much like a hotel, with sliding glass doors which I lock when I start my shift. I came in 10 minutes to 11 to start my shift. Despite its size, I am the only security person here at night. My coworker who was leaving told me the side iron gates that lead to the parking lot are open on one side, because they're stuck. She told me the repair people would be in tomorrow sometime to fix them, but to just do some extra patrol out there tonight. This place sits across the road from a public park, and while the area is pretty decent, the park tends to breed druggies as well as homeless at night, who sometimes like to try and wander on the property or cause trouble. As a security guard in this place, we only have pepper spray, a large flashlight, keys, and a company cell phone to call 911 if need be. I am to walk the grounds and floors for anyone suspicious, watch the cameras in the security office, which is in the lobby, and otherwise try to stay alert. I locked all the doors. I did a sweep of all the floors and then found myself back at the desk. It was really quiet, and it rolled to around 3 a.m. I had just sat down to eat my lunch when the company cell phone rang. The caller ID let me know it was from one of our outside call box phones. I picked it up and said, "Thanks for calling so-and-so resort. This is Security Officer James. How can I help you?" All I heard was someone breathing heavy. I glanced at the cameras and could see the shadow of a figure just standing out of reach from the door in camera view. All I could see is the open call box and the metal cord from the phone. I again asked, "How can I help?" The man started to breathe heavier and laugh. Then silence. It was one of those laughs you hear in a movie when the lunatic is about to do something terrible. I got up from my chair and started to walk out of the office into the door he was at when it rang again, this time from call box number 2, which was further down. I quickly looked at the camera and seen this large figure in a hooded jacket. I knew this was strange as it was very warm outside. He was holding a black bag in his hands, but had his back to the camera. He said, "I'm coming for you, and you're gonna die." He hung up before I had the chance to say anything. Then the phone rang again. This time when I picked up, I didn't give him a chance to speak. I let him know the cops are on their way and to leave the property now as he is on camera. He tried the doors and both were locked. This time he was at yet another call box. This guy had to be running at top speed to make it to the next call box, as there are a good distance between doors outside. He said, "I can see you. Are you ready to die? The cops won't make it here on time." I spoke loud and pretended like I was talking to another security officer and asked him to send 3 other security guards to such and such location and that police are dispatched. The guy slammed the phone down loud against the call box receiver, and I watched him on camera take off into the darkness to the park area. I figured it scared him off. I was going to call the police, but honestly the location of this place, it would take them at least 15 minutes to get here, and I figured this guy was just some tweaker from the park. I scanned the cameras and walked to the back lot just to be sure no one was there. I had my pepper spray in my hands just in case, but no one was out there. I returned to my desk and wrote what happened in the incident log. About a half hour passed. I had finished lunch and was just about to do rounds when the phone rang again. This time it was from an unknown number. I thought it would be a resident calling. I picked up and said my normal line. The voice said, "Where are the cops? I don't see them, but I see you." It was that guy again. I scanned the cameras and did not see anything. I went to the front door to look out, and there was nothing but darkness and a few front floodlights on. He said, "I know you're alone, and you are going to die soon." I basically told him to get f***ed and hung up. I called the non-emergency number to 911 and let them know what was going on. The dispatcher said she would send out a car to check the area and make contact with me. Next thing I hear is a loud thud against the glass windows. I heard it come from the day manager's office, which sits across from the security room. Another 3 loud bangs. I run to the day manager's office door and unlock it. I pull up the shades and shine my flashlight through the window into the darkness. I catch the face of this hooded man. He looked to be about 40, with long stringy hair poking down and these wild eyes. He looked right at me and grinned before slamming his head into the window to try and break it. I started yelling at him and told him the cops are coming and to get the fuck out of here. That's when he pulled the biggest damn butcher knife I've ever seen and made a slicing motion like he would use it to cut my throat. This guy was crazy and probably on drugs. He continued slamming his body against the glass trying to break it. He used his head to try and break the window, but managed to bust his head open, so the window now has blood all over it. I backed out of the office and locked the door to it. I then decided to wait for cops as this guy was out of control, and my pepper spray wasn't going to stop him, and the last thing I wanted was to handle a bloody crazy person. He then ran to the nearest side door and took the phone box off the hook. He then ran to each call box and removed all the phones, which caused my company's cell phone to ring and jam up the line. This guy had to be on hard drugs or something, because he ran as fast as I could imagine. I looked at the camera and noticed, to my horror, the sliding door to the garage was open. Now, it was common for residents to go out to their cars and unlock the door themselves. It's just a sliding lock, like the kind in department stores, but this is the last thing I need with this nut job running around. I sprinted across the building and took a shortcut through a couple banquet rooms to make it to the garage. As I was doing so, I saw that crazy guy running up the garage pathway. I slid that door as fast as I could and locked it. He then slammed his body into the glass over and over, but the door did not move. I locked the second set of doors in case he got through the outside ones. He would at least be trapped or slow him down. I reached for my pepper spray and yelled, "The cops are here," thinking maybe he would just leave. He started to laugh and howl, and then held that knife up again before running into the darkness of the parking garage. I called the cops on my personal cell phone to let them know that the man has a knife. The dispatcher told me that the cops will be there shortly, and I let her know what happened. I made my way to the front again and locked myself in the security office. At least this place had no windows, and I could watch on camera. I heard another loud thud and bang, and I realized he was at the front lobby doors, trying to get in. I was hoping the cops would pull up any minute, but they didn't. And while it probably didn't take them long, it felt like forever at this point. This guy was standing at the lobby doors with a knife in hand. He looked at the camera, and by this time his hood had fallen back. He was bald-headed with wild, long, stringy, crazy hair on the sides of his head. His eyes were huge, and I will never forget that grin on his face as he mouthed to the camera, "Die, die," while making stabbing motions with that knife. Blood running across his face from slamming into the glass, and then ran into the darkness. About 5 minutes later, the cops show up. They sent one officer. He asked me what the guy looked like, and I told him I have camera footage. He drove through the area first and shined a spotlight. The cop returned to tell me he couldn't find anyone, and he had driven around the entire block and back area behind the golf course. I showed him the footage and printed out a picture from the camera. The cop said he didn't see any sign of the guy, and that he would patrol the area and to call back if he came again. It was nearly 5 a.m. when the cop left. When it was daylight, I walked around and hung up all the phones from the call boxes. This guy literally took all phones off the hook. When my manager came in during the morning shift at 8 a.m., I told her what happened, and she said that they would keep an eye out and have a meeting to let everyone who worked here know and to be aware. They had an extra security guard on my shift for 2 weeks after, but the guy never returned.